In this episode of The Primer, we talk about the Muslims of the Kashmir Valley and their complicated relations with the Dogra regimes of Maharajas Ranbir Singh and Pratap Singh.
Subjects and sovereigns. Muslims under Ranbir Singh and Pratap Singh. When the Dogra rulers took charge of Jammu and Kashmir in 1846, they inherited a state remarkable for its diversity but divided by hierarchy. Muslims formed the overwhelming majority, particularly in the Kashmir Valley, while political and administrative power rested with a small Hindu Dogra elite drawn largely from Jammu. The rulers saw themselves as custodians of a composite realm rather than representatives of a single community. Yet in practice, the structure of privilege reflected caste, kinship, and loyalty more than numerical strength. Under Maharaja Ranbir Singh, 1857 to 1885, the state began to assume the features of a modern administration. Codified laws, courts, taxation, and a standing army. His introduction of the Ranbir Penal Code in 1872, modelled on the Indian Penal Code, formally guaranteed equality before law. Persian, the old court language, was replaced by Urdu, opening some official avenues to Muslim scribes and scholars familiar with the new script. In theory, the Dogra regime was secular in governance. In practice, social mobility remained limited. Land and revenue posts were dominated by Dogra officials, while the valley's Muslims continued as cultivators, artisans, and petty traders. Economically, Kashmir's Muslims bore the brunt of heavy taxation. The shawl industry, once the pride of the valley, suffered under export duties and shifting markets, reducing thousands of weavers to debt. Agricultural taxes were high and often collected through intermediaries, a system that encouraged corruption. Periodic famine and flood deepened hardship. Yet Ranbir Singh's rule was not marked by religious persecution. He patronized Sufi shrines, maintained law and order impartially, and saw his legitimacy as ruler of all subjects. The imbalance lay not in intent but in structure, an inherited hierarchy that offered power to the few and subsistence to the many. The pattern persisted into the reign of Maharaja Pratap Singh, 1885 to 1925. British supervision through the Residency pushed the state towards administrative reform, land settlement, road building, education. But these benefits reached unevenly. State schools in Jammu and Srinagar largely served upper caste Hindus and the emerging Pandit intelligentsia. Muslim participation in education and government service remained small, constrained by poverty and lack of access. Even by the early 1920s, Muslims held less than a fifth of minor civil posts, though they formed over 3/4 of the population. At the same time, social life in the valley remained intertwined. Markets, crafts, and festivals linked Hindus and Muslims in daily exchange. Persian and Urdu culture, shared idioms of poetry and devotion, continued to bind communities together. The state's structure may have been unequal, but society's rhythm was still interwoven. By the turn of the century, however, awareness of disparity had begun to grow. Modern education, the press, and new contact with British India introduced ideas of representation and rights. Early Muslim graduates and clerks, a small but vocal group, started to question exclusion, first in private petitions and later through associations. Their critique was not against Dogra rule itself, but against barriers to participation. Both Ranbir Singh and Pratap Singh ruled within the logic of their age, paternal monarchs presiding over subjects, not citizens. Their governance brought stability and the first signs of modern administration, but left untouched the deeper inequalities of access and power. By the 1920s, The structure they had preserved was showing strain. Out of that strain, a new political consciousness was beginning to form. The first murmur of a future that would ask for voice, not merely protection.
Thanks for watching this episode of Primer on Jammu and Kashmir. Here is a quick note from the editors of the Dispatch. While dealing with historical events, we are conscious of the fact that history has no single view. In places like Jammu and Kashmir, this can be more complicated. While explaining the events of history through this primer, we are taking the best possible care to be objective and to offer context wherever views differ starkly. We welcome you to write to us and enrich the knowledge base on Jammu and Kashmir.